Greetings, everybody. This is Jim, and this iconic map to my right, this busy little map, is really iconic to Fantasy Trip players, and there's a number of reasons why I really appreciate this map. I can get into the specifics in a little bit, but it's from a game, or from an adventure, I should say, that is pretty much the B2 Keep of the Borderlands for the Fantasy Trip role-playing game. But regardless if you play the Fantasy Trip or not, I really think you should be using this module today. I'm going to be going over with you why you should be using Tollenkar's Lair from Steve Jackson Games. So when most people play the Fantasy Trip role-playing game, they start out by playing Melee, which is just the combat rules for the game. You play a few gladiator battles, then you go to Death Test. Actually, this isn't Death Test to me. Let me change that. That's Death Test to me. This is just more machismo. As a marketer, I like this a lot better. This is a little bit too tongue-in-cheek. You don't know what's going on. So definitely this was the way to go, in my opinion. Anyway, once you play the few gladiator battles, then you go into the Death Test, which room by room, it's almost like it's a new tactic that your characters get to learn, whether it's hand-to-hand, pike weapons, and so on. By the time the players are done with the game, whether they survive or not, they are pretty well versed in the martial aspect of the game. Then they go on to Wizard, which of course adds spells, and then you play Death Test 2, and that has room after room, and then you get used to spells in the game a little bit until the end, right? But then they have the In the Labyrinth role-playing game, right? And then it's like, well, wait a minute. This adds all the skills to the game, like, searching for secret doors and woodsmen and, naturalists and all that. Wait a minute. What's the adventure for that? That is exactly why there is Tollenkar's Lair. That's what it's for, is basically to be kind of a Death Test 3 almost, if you will. Only now you're going in a labyrinth against Tollenkar the Mage. Role players and wargamers alike are going to want to go to this Kickstarter by Columbia Games. It's the Neoprene Deluxe War Map Vault. Now, normally it is for war games, but we do make some of the Neoprene maps now for the Hard World role-playing setting. You're going to want to go to the link down below and check out all these pre-pandemic and pre-tariff pricing that we got going on right now. It's going to be limited. The prices ain't going to stay that way. All right, so here we have the Labyrinth map again. And the thing is, I think we've lost out on this. I don't see a lot of adventures using anything like this. Most of the adventures that have come out are all pre-programmed adventures. And I can understand the idea because I've done 2 of them myself. The thing is just that you go to area and they don't use this kind of map. And man, I really loved using it. So it's intimidating to look at first. But the thing is, there's some important ideas behind using a map like this. So one of the things I really like about the Labyrinth map is it expands and contracts to the game. So otherwise, every hex on the Labyrinth map is actually a mega hex in the combat game. Otherwise, a hex with the surrounding hexes. All right, so these little rooms can get real big real quick. Now, I made a big misconception when I was playing this at first, when I was thinking about it. Because I was thinking it was going to be more like Descent or Imperial Assault, if you ever played one of those games. But basically you have the characters, and as they move, you put more tiles down to open up new areas. Here, it's not very efficient to do so, and this game is based on making things efficient, right? So the idea is, you may place 2 mega hexes down, say place all your characters in there for their marching order, and then you go through the game, and then you expand out or you keep going, and you go on the Labyrinth map, and then when they finally fight something, then you expand everything out that you see on the mega hexes. And that makes it so much easier, and it's very easy. Makes chases a lot easier because, again, if you're having to chase, my first instinct was to say, okay, I'm going to have to put all these tiles out. This guy's running away. I'm going to put all the tiles out that he can run away from, and then I move everybody over. And that's just kind of tedious. You can see that happening. It's like, okay, they move 10, you move 10, just to do a chase. Here they say do it in the Labyrinth, and then you condense everybody's movement rate. So if you have an 8 or a 10, you actually move 4 Labyrinth hexes. And then if you're a little bit slower, you go slower still. It makes chases a lot easier. Now, the thing is, there is a little bit of arbitrary movement here. So basically, let's say you have your characters in a mega hex for a marching order, right? And then all of a sudden they're on the chase. So when they finally catch that guy in the mega hex, and you're expanding back to the mega hex from the labyrinth, are they going to be in the same position? Well, you could do that, but you also could say, okay, put your guys in the position you want to, because, things, when you're chasing somebody, I mean, these people are not going to be in necessarily the same order, and it's just a game for efficiency's sake, so I would probably just allow that. So that is one of the things I really liked about it. It really gave me an idea of how efficient in the Labyrinth system is. Another thing that you're going to be doing when you're playing Tollenkar's Lair is definitely tracking sound. On the lower levels, there's 26 guards on duty on different shades of competence. Some of them are drunk, some of them are sleeping, some of them might actually be paying attention. And up to 30 hexes you could hear a fight. Any blood-curdling scream, they might pay attention. Now, the only thing, and it makes it really easy to track, it's 30 hexes away, -5 for each closed door, etc., etc. But there are a few things. Now, the only thing that I really wish they would have done, though, is to put something on the map saying there is an alert monster here, instead of just the numbers, so you don't have to, because, one of the things is, in your labyrinth, there's multiple pathways. You're going to have to, as a game master, I found myself looking at other numbers saying, was there something in there paying attention? And that kind of takes up time. So as far as efficiency goes, if I were ever making an adventure, and if you ever did, it would be nice to have a little dot there somewhere saying, yes, there's something paying attention here that would definitely hear that sound. Tollenkar's Lair is definitely an introductory adventure. For the first few levels, up until you get to Little Kess, the bandit leader, it covers all the basics. Again, we talking about sound, talking about the guards, hidden doors, a couple of those, and you're going to be using your skills for the characters. It's going to be much more than just a straightforward fight. If you don't have characters with skills, you're going to find yourself packing a little bit early. But either way, even if I brought in 9 36 to 38 point characters, and I still found myself packing shortly after I passed the first few levels in Little Kess and all that. So it's definitely challenging. And I remember Steve Jackson talking about it. The adventure is really meant for you to go in, get beat up, come back out, go to the city, reinforce, and the city's close by because Landmaster's Hall, Tollenkar's Lair, is actually just a few miles outside of the city. And it's a room, nobody's been into it, so nobody knew he was there. Now, the thing is, Little Kess, the bandit leader, if you don't defeat him and get past him, Tollenkar may very well not be aware that anything's happening because Kess doesn't want him to know whether he's fearing for his life or fearing for his job. He's just trying to take care of things himself. And because of the close proximity to the town, you don't have to worry about restocking too much. So you can go right back in and go after him again. So there's a lot going on here. And like I said, I brought 36 to 38 level point characters in there. And 9 of them, and they found themselves packing halfway through. So it's definitely not something you're going to be defeating Tollenkar anytime soon. Now, one thing I really like to do that I'd encourage, most people probably do it to some degree. Now, some people keep journals of their character as they go throughout, their own character. Most people only have one character at a time at the table. But we all know the old school style is more along the lines of you have multiple characters. They're pretty one-dimensional. And if they survive, then they get their story, as opposed to modern, where you get this whole backstory ahead of time. One thing I also like to do is, Steve Jackson Games gave you these little... In the Legacy Edition, gave you these little journals. Now, you don't need these ones specifically. You can get your journal at Walmart or Staples or whatever. But I would write down the adventure that I wrote, the characters I created in the adventure, major events that I can remember what happened, and if any of them survived in the aftermath. Now, I've done that with all the adventures so far, but this one I did something different. With the advent of ChatGPT, I had a chance to actually, it really is a great tool to chronicle almost everything. Even in a session, you can't remember everything that happens in every room, and you're not going to say it. Here, though, what I normally do anyway, whether it's war games or role-playing, I usually play 1 or 2 rooms or turns a night, and then I just call it a day. right? And I just keep playing it that way. I don't feel like I have to be rushed to finish the whole thing. Luckily, I have that table right there that doesn't get touched. I don't have cats, none of that stuff. But with the advent of ChatGPT, it's really made it even easier. I would just go through what happened during that night. I would just freeform it. I dictate it into Word. I just talk. I don't try to make a flowery thing. Sometimes I come up with some cool words or sayings or expressions or something like that. But then I just input it all in ChatGPT, and it makes a complete, concise story for me. It puts it all together. Yes, you got to read it to make sure, because it's not ChatGPT. He's not perfect. And of course, dictating through words, not perfect either. And I don't try to edit that at all. I just say the words, and ChatGPT does a pretty good job of, if I say a word and it gets it wrong, knowing what I meant. But I have it in a link down below. It's called 9 Against Tollenkar, and it's basically just a story of what happened during the entire adventure. And if you can imagine how cool that is, I suggest you might actually want to experiment on your own campaigns and chronicle what happened in the adventure. And by the time you're done, you may have an actually big story. And it's not something you necessarily publish, but I can tell you this: it's readable, and because it's your characters, it's more fun, even if they are maybe two-dimensional and stuff like that. And you see the whole story from beginning to end, and you just can't remember, because most of the time I think of adventures, I can think of maybe one or two things that happen. This makes it so you can remember just about everything, and it was quite exciting. So check that link down below. And thank you very much, and I'll see you next video.